name is Eleni, and we'll be chairing this first panel for the day. Thank you for joining us. We have already delayed, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce our speakers for you today, and I'm going to turn it over to Professor Tziampiris, the first speaker, who will be talking about the new geopolitical environment in the Eastern Mediterranean. Second will go Professor Platias. They will be talking about new sources of insecurity in the region. And last but not least, Professor Paravantis will be talking about security-related questions. You have 10 minutes each. I know it's boring. And let me turn it over to you.
10 minutes is just his introductory remarks.
Yeah. The introduction to the introduction. I'll use the podium. So I cannot stand. I need to stand. I cannot really be sitting. I'm sitting too much. Okay. So first of all, thank you very much, Professor Olberg. Thank you so much for opening up your institute to us. It means a lot to our students and to our faculty members. Professor Chari Milonas. We go back to the same hometown of Thessaloniki. We've gone a long way since then, and you even more so. And so thank you, everyone, and a special shout out to our students, graduate students, 2 graduate degrees, International and European Studies and Energy Strategy Law and Economics. The latter is completely taught in English, so we actually have not only Greek students, but we have international students from the region, because I couldn't agree more with what you said. When it comes to a lot of contemporary issues, you cannot just afford to have a one-country approach. You need to have a wider regional approach for things to click together and make sense. And this is the introduction to what I will try to do in 10 or 12 minutes today. And I'm going to talk about a region, the new region of the Eastern Mediterranean. And the question that you will inevitably have in your minds is, what is this pinhead professor talking about? There's a new region, ardent regions, just territories that are there forever. How can a region be new? Well, let's see. First of all, let me say that regions are increasingly becoming more consequential to global politics. And despite their potential centrality to current developments, the possibility that the declared policy preferences of the President Trump and his administration may accelerate the formation of regional groupings, and the fact that they are more significant to the world's less powerful states, regions have not received the academic attention, especially from the discipline of international relations. They have been relatively neglected, partly because of the rise of neorealism and its supporters like Professor Platias. So they're partly responsible for this neglect. Now, we said region, but guess what? The concept of regions is certainly encased in ambiguity and disagreement. There's actually no agreement on what a region is. Let me give you just one example. We all know about the Middle East, right? You open any newspaper, you turn on the TV, there are references to the Middle East. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll see that the first time the term Middle East was ever used was 1902. We have found no reference to something called the region of the Middle East before 1902. And actually, it was Captain Alfred Mann who made the first reference. In a classic essay, review essay, Professor Roderick Davison actually cautioned us. He said, the fact remains, and this is like after reviewing all the literature, the fact remains that no one knows where the Middle East is, although many claim to know. Scholars and governments have produced reasoned definitions that are in hopeless disagreement. There is no accepted formula, and serious efforts to define the area varied by as much as 3,000 to 4,000 miles east and west. And even today we talk about the greater Middle East, and that suggests the ambiguity. I mean, I don't have the time, but I can do the same thing for Eastern Europe. So my point is, and this is well established actually academically, that although we talk about regions, there's no accepted definition of what a region is. So what do? Do we give up? No. What I suggest we do is, we're not going to agree on a definition, but I think we can do better and agree on an approach. And if we approach the concept of a region, and in this case it's going to be the East Med we're going to be talking today, let's see what parameters can be involved in something called a region. The first parameter inevitably has to be geographical, but that's only one. Without some geographical limits, the term regionalism or regions becomes diffuse, even unimaginable. Nor can regions include an endless number of states. They gotta be limits. I mean, we can talk about the limits, but we cannot deny the fact that geographical limits have to exist. And we can say, perhaps, that within these geographical limits, and we can disagree about them, but they do exist, there's a certain core, a core group of states within a region. Secondly, so one parameter is geographic. Secondly, regions have a security dimension. And that means that a region has a distinct and significant subsystem of security relations. And we can talk more, in fact, we're going to be hearing much more about this. And there's all the theory about security complexes. I don't have the time to go into this. Third, there's the issue of a region's cohesion. And cohesion is related to both internal and external recognition. Let me explain this. So we talked to a region. Do the people who live in the region recognize themselves as belonging to a region? This is not necessarily a given. If you talk to a lot of Croatians, they will say, we do not belong in the region of the Balkans. You talk to a lot of Europeans, especially in the 1990s, they say, well, that's not how we view it. So external and internal recognition are factors, as is the degree that there's a certain cohesion in this region. A fourth parameter, I argue, is a common historical background. Does this exist? Yes, no, to what an extent? Is there economic interdependence? Could be a fifth parameter. And sixth, does a region have any unique characteristics? All regions have a geographical dimension, but maybe some regions have some characteristics that are unique to them. So if this is an approach, and of course it's open to debate, and there's so much good stuff that I cannot actually talk about because of time constraints, let's go to the Eastern Mediterranean and let's see how this approach applies to this region and why I'm saying we should be viewing this as a new region, and in fact we're going to be talking about this for the next couple of hours. So the East Med is located east of the 20th meridian and includes states such as Cyprus, Egypt, Greece, Israel, Lebanon, Libya, Syria, and Turkey. But just because nothing is clear-cut in international relations, there are also entities, self-declared entities. ISIS would be there. The Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, self-declared. Gaza would be there. I would include the Palestinian Authority. And then, just to make things really wonderful, there are people arguing that certain states are honorary East Med or Mediterranean members, such as Jordan, for example. That would be the classic example. You don't have the Mediterranean Sea, you cannot really see it, but you're considered as an honorary member. So there is at least a group core of countries, a number of countries, that I would say are part of what is the East Med today. And if we talk about the core countries of the region, I would argue, again, we can talk about this, but right now, as things stand, given developments, the core groups are Greece, Israel, I started with Greece, but it's Israel, Greece, Cyprus, and Turkey in terms of activity. And with Egypt, but that would be the core. Not that the other countries are not important, but Syria is very important, but it's consumed in civil war right now. What about the region's internal recognition? I would say that there are strong regional characteristics that are understood regionally. And in terms of external recognition, I would argue that in the past 5 or 6 years, there's been a sea change. And I can give you a number of examples. I could go on for a long time, but let me just say our conference today, the proposed East Med pipeline, the Roads East Med initiative, an academic research program that I won, thank you very much European Union, on the East Med, creating a MOOC and so on and so forth. So past 5 years, East Med has had much greater external recognition as a region, which was not the case before. And what about common historical background? Common historical background. Guess what? Every single country I mentioned has been a part of the Ottoman Empire. So if the Mediterranean as a whole, if we want to see a common historical background, we really have to go back to Roman times. The East Med, every single country, and I'm not saying this has necessarily been a happy experience, it's not a valid judgment, it's a factual judgment, it has been part of the Ottoman Empire. So I would argue there's more historical commonality in the East Med than other parts of even the Mediterranean, and I'm not idealizing this. Let me say security issues. We'll hear more about that, but yes, I would even go as far as to say as the East Med right now is a great laboratory for great power competition, and there's a clear-cut security dimension to what is going on there. So take on that. I have colleagues of mine who have been crunching the numbers, and I would argue that the East Med is more cohesive and has more economic interdependence in terms of the Mediterranean as a whole, but I wouldn't press that point too much. Big elephant in the room right now, energy. That is the big game changer in the region, and we will be talking and even having conferences about this. Let me finally conclude, since I have this, I'll do it in 10 minutes. Let me finally conclude, and we'll talk why this is important to be able to view it as a separate region. But in my analysis, I said, okay, there's one final thing, and maybe a region has a unique characteristic. And in terms of the East Med, if you go even back centuries, and I've located wonderful quotes by Gibbon and various other people, but even common sense, we can go even further back, or we can go there today. It seems to me that the East Med is almost a border region between East and West. So let's see, it's where East meets West, and things get interesting. And I think that's the unique characteristic of this region, and it does make things interesting. So let me conclude by saying that the organizers of this conference, in all their wisdom, were absolutely correct to identify the East Med as a new region that demands academic research and better understanding. Thank you very much.